Good day, everyone. This is Charina Claustro, and I'm here to report the 8-step communication planning model under Lesson A Social Marketing Different Models as Practiced by Development Organizations under Module 4. But before we start the discussion, let us first enumerate the objectives of this lesson. So first, we need to describe the we hope we would be able to describe the different models by which development organizations implement social marketing programs. And second, draw from these models your own framework. This is very important because we have this term project under the 2.8 that we need to develop, plan, and implement our own social marketing program. So let's start. So the 8-step communication planning model is basically utilized by the Communication Resource Center or the CRC. It's an India-based organization with significant experience and expertise in development communication. So this model provides a blueprint for planning, regardless of where you are in your program or in your grant cycle, and it also allows users to create a site-specific actionable communication plan. And it's also based on the theory and practice of social marketing, which adapts commercial marketing techniques principles to influence people to take recommended actions or make behavioral change for positive change. And as you can see on the slide, we have or this model is composed of 8 steps, no? And we will uh, examine these 8 steps. So let's start. Step one, assess your current situation. So at this stage, our aim is basically to realistically evaluate our program or our campaign by discussing your achievements so far and the challenges that you perceive or encounter. And to understand, or basically, on we can do that by first asking the right question. So, as shown on the slide, there are several questions that we need to consider. And this begins, of course, by asking the right questions, such as whether the program is reaching its intended audience, are we effectively serving the diverse cultures, are we garnering support from our partners, is the program achieving satisfactory outcomes, etc., etc., etc. So once we have uh, answered all those questions, what we need to do is perform a SWOT analysis. So I know many of us basically are familiar on this tool. So SWOT analysis is a valuable tool for assessing your current status of your program or campaign. So SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So once we have the answers from the questions that I have mentioned earlier, what we can do is to uh, uh, get those answers and try to complement uh, those answers by conducting or by performing a SWOT analysis. So once we do that, the next step is to focus on communication goals and objectives. So basically, the purpose here is to clearly define the outcomes that we aim to achieve in, of course, in measurable terms. So effective communication, we all know that it is vital for our program success. And by establishing strategic communication goals, we can navigate towards our objectives more effectively. So basically, our communication goals should first, this is very important, align with our programmatic or support with our program or with your programmatic objectives. And second, contribute to sustaining your program. And of course, lastly, is to promote systemic change. So these goals, if we analyze, basically should aim to engage, raise awareness, and ultimately influence behavior. No, that's the very essence of social marketing, and we want to persuade others to support our cause and ensuring that our goals are realistically and measurable so we can track our progress. For example, On the slide, you can find a sample format for setting up a communication goals. So what we need to do is to identify or to list our program objectives. So once we do that, we what we can do is to identify communication goals uh, that would complement to these program objectives. So for example, our program objectives are ensuring fidelity, engaging students in mediation programs, and perhaps uh, these objectives, what we can do is perhaps our communication goal should be focused on educating or engaging and gaining or support from various stakeholders or partners. And how can we do that? Perhaps we need to involve influencing program decisions, convincing teachers to adopt the said curriculum or the anti-bullying curriculum, or perhaps generating interest among students. So those are some. So what you can see by setting up your program objectives, we need to identify communication goals to each of those program objectives. And after we do that, we need of course to prioritize these communication goals depending on your priority, of course, for your program objectives. Step number three, it is intended to identify intended audiences. So the purpose here is basically to pinpoint all potential target audience segments for each communication goal. So once we have identified program objectives, identify, also creating or developing communication goals for each program objectives, we also need to create or we need to segment, or we need to identify uh, our intended audience for each communication goals. So, for example, your goal number one is to generate interest for peer mediation programs, and our target students are undergraduates. So, that's the intended audiences. Next step, we need to segment it. So, segment your intended audience. So, for example, the least audience is undergraduate student. The example of segmenting is basically perhaps for this communication goal, our target audience are juniors and seniors who have volunteered with suicide prevention hotlines. For the for this communication goal, perhaps our intended audience are junior or students majoring in social work and psychology, and so on and so forth. So once we segment our intended audience, we also need to prioritize our intended audience segments. Once we prioritize, the final step is to learn more about our intended audience segments. So this entails us to learn as much as we can about their mission, interests, their values, their beliefs, and their interests or goals. So once we have identified the the intended audience segments, the next step is to develop and pre-test our messages. So, in this stage, we need to make our messages that connect with our intended audiences or segments and encourage them to support goals. So, messages can either give information or like be informative, like convey new facts, or it can be like persuasive, like convincing people to change their thoughts or actions. And sometimes when we develop our message, we can do both. So before uh, people act, we need to realize that they often need to understand and agree with our message, and these steps helps us ensure our messages are effective. So when developing messages, we need to remember that we need to focus on what your audience wants to hear and not what you want to say. So that's like using their thoughts, their values, not yours, and this will help us to make our message uh, to make our messages connect better with them. So once we develop our messages, we need to pre-test it. So before making a lot of materials or activities, we need to test it first with our few people from your target audience segments to see basically if they work.